Welcome back to the Clear Shot podcast. Today I'm chatting with Sally Prosser, a voice and public speaking coach, as well as a podcaster and soon to be published author. As you might expect, we'll be talking about voice in this episode, but we'll also cover some tips about recording, things like whether to script your podcast and whether you want to be the host or the expert. Thank you for coming on and chatting to me. You know, the people that listen to the Clear Shot podcast just want to, understand a bit more about that podcast world. And one, you've been doing it for a long time, but a lot of your clients play that game as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I started the podcast a few years ago. I'm up to episode 250 or so. And so long before that, everybody said, you're a voice coach. Why don't you have a podcast? And you hear this from every person who started the podcast. Why didn't I start it earlier? Because it's just such a great way to connect with your audience. It's so much more accessible than other media because people listen while they're driving or while they're walking or while they're cooking or while their eyes aren't on you, their ears can be on you.
Yes.
And when you hear someone's voice, it actually activates part of the brain that doesn't activate when you see them. And it's the emotional part of the brain which creates a stronger connection. So if you want to connect with people, hearing their voice is going to do that. They say it's the closest thing to touching somebody. So if you can't, get out there and hug all of your audience, not that would be appropriate in all situations, then podcasting is the next best thing.
Yeah, great. And how do you utilize it within your business? Well, maybe before that, tell us a little bit about your business and then how you utilize podcast within it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a voice and public speaking coach, and my business is all services to help people write speeches, overcome their fear of public speaking. And I have online courses, one-on-one coaching, team workshops, speaking, kind of the whole gambit. And podcasting is what you'd call like the top of funnel.
Yep.
So it's that awareness piece.
Yep.
And I use it for two main reasons. The first one is, of course, for people to hear my voice and get to know me. So know about my life, my story, my expertise, that kind of thing. The second thing is so I've got an excuse to reach out to people I want to speak to, to get to know them. So being able to say, oh, hey, would you like to come on my podcast? And then you connect with them through the podcast, through the whole process before and after. And I'm able to make some really good business connections through that.
One of the things we talk about in here is that people are often quite honoured to have you on their podcast, to be invited on. You value my opinion so much. Do you find that with the people you invite on?
What I've found is every person who I've thought, ooh, they're a little bit too big to be on my podcast, they're not going to write back, they're too busy, just ask. Because 9 times out of 10, they go, oh, yes, I'd love to, let's book it in. And you're like, oh my God, I've got this person on my podcast. Of course, there are times when you get no response or people say that they can't. But in the same way, sometimes I get asked to be on podcasts and I decline for whatever reason. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't ask, because if you don't ask, then you'll definitely not get those guests.
I know social's a big part of your business as well. And where does your podcast fit into that? Do you put a lot of effort into TikTok and a bit of effort into podcasts and a bit of effort into Instagram? How does it all play together for you?
Yeah, so I make my podcast kind of the hero piece of content. So I have an Instagram channel that is just for the podcast, and I have content Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday to do with that episode of the podcast. So Monday is like a promo, Tuesday is a little snippet, Wednesday is either a review or a guest win of the week. So I often keep an eye out on what my guests are up to, and if they've done something great, then I feature them again.
Ideal.
Then Thursday's the collab post.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, it's a way to sort of add value to the guest well beyond they've been on the show.
And throw back to an old episode as well.
Yeah, and then Fridays is the throwback quote as well. And then that will get, some of it will be used on TikTok, Pinterest, YouTube Shorts, and also it forms the content for the LinkedIn newsletter.
There is a lot you can get out of a podcast, isn't there?
Oh, everything. Yeah.
One of the things that's really tricky for people who come in this room, they talk about whether they want to be the expert or the host. But how do you navigate those two roles in your show?
Well, you can be both. So I do guest and then solo, which means when I have the guest, I really give them all of the airtime, and I'm just asking those classic journalism questions of, so what happened next? Tell me more about that. I listen to a lot of hosts who try to make them too much the star of the show in an interview, and it can really ruin the interview. Of course, adding your own opinion and adding, different things that come up is completely fine. But then what that allows me to do is when I do my solo episode, it's just totally me, and I can make it completely about what I want it to be. And with those solo episodes, it's usually one of two things. The first one is story. So if you can share about, I don't know, what I've been up to, being on holidays. One of my most listened to episodes is why I decided not to have kids. People love opinion-based content. So I always try to put a bit of that flavour into an episode. I always look at the episode at the end and say, could anybody else have delivered this? And it always has to be no. Because if another voice coach could deliver the same content, then you're not doing anything different to connect. So always put in a little bit of Sally Prosser cringe special, as you'd call it.
Yeah.
And then the other part is just an absolute classic how-to, which I do more for SEO. So how to project your voice, how to speak louder, how to overcome nerves, how to guest on a podcast, those sorts of topics that people are searching.
Answering questions that people might have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
FAQs.
I'd love to talk about the logistics of your solo episodes because it's not something that we do in here particularly often. In this room and in our business, it's a lot of conversation. So when you do a solo episode, what's that process look like for you?
Oh, it's a dream to edit. It's always a lot faster. I decide what the topic's going to be, and then I sometimes write an outline of like the 3 key points I'm going to hit and then speak. Other times, and this might surprise people, other times I actually write out the script.
That was going to be my question.
And the reason I do that is just for time. If I can spend that time, typing out, and these episodes are only about, 7 to 15 minutes, they're never that long, and I write it all out, it means that I can do it in one take. And when you do it in one take, it means you can edit it in one take, and it makes the whole process a lot faster. I find that if you are told all the time, don't script it out, just, write points, then you could be there getting stuck and tongue-tied and having to stop and start. However, in saying that, you have to be good enough at delivery so it doesn't sound like you're reading. So I think people would be surprised to hear that because I use a lot of filler words and and colloquial language that people don't guess that I'm reading.
I suppose it's just about how do you, and that's really part of your business, right, is helping people get to that level, but also coaching them through a speech so it doesn't sound read?
So there is so many things that you can do to sound like you're not reading. One of the main ones is like the variation in pitch.
Well, that's what my next question is. How many notes do you make that are like on the light and shade? Like when you've got a script in front of you, is there, okay, go slowly here?
Yeah, so I'd say this is an area where I've got unconscious competence, which means I do it without thinking. But that's because through my training, and I work with clients on this, where yes, you can mark the fasts and slows, the highs and lows, the louds and softs with, little arrows and little marks and little ... dots. So you can read it like music. I often say a speech or a podcast with no markings is like song lyrics with no melody. So people say, okay, I've got the words, but what's the tune? So I would definitely recommend if you're starting out to put those cues in. When are you going high? When are you going low? When are you going to take the pauses? I'd say pausing is such a big thing. I used to work in radio, and the worst thing you could do was stop talking because as soon as you take a pause, they're like, oh gosh, something's happened, and they'll fire to the ads because it's the number one reason people will switch off. And when I was working in radio in Wollongong, I remember I had a panic attack one morning reading the news, and I just completely froze mid-sentence. And then I just, fired straight to the ads, which is something that you could do because I was so, panicked about taking that break. With podcasting, you're going to have a pretty long pause for somebody to go, oh, something's wrong, to pause it and then go and listen to something else. Like you've got that attention. Yeah. And so when you have that attention, use that time to breathe. Use those beats.
Can we talk a little bit about the clients that you work with who are going to be on a podcast or thinking about starting a podcast? What type of conversations are you having with them?
Yeah, so we'll start with being on a podcast. The And this is similar to media training. So, Nick, you and I know each other from the land of television news. And the worst thing you can do as a spokesperson or as a podcast guest is say, I just want to answer the questions. I just want to answer the questions. Because that's putting all of the power with the interviewer and none with you. And so you're sort of taken on a wild goose chase with where they want to go, which might not necessarily be bad. But if that person doesn't fully understand what you do, and chances are they won't, no one understands what you do.
And that's the point of these conversations.
Yeah, as well as what you do. So you need to go in there with key messages. So what are your 3 key messages? And often it's like the problem that you're solving, the solution that you have, and what's your call to action. You know, so when a guest or a host asks, oh, you know, and anything you'd like to add, and that's a good question to ask at the end of every episode, anything you'd like to add, or where can people find you? You need to have something ready to go. And people that say, oh, no, that's all right. It's like, oh, it's a missed opportunity. So it's having those clear key messages and also having a couple of key stories. So what are some stories that I want to deliver? And you'll find that most of that can fit into whatever question you ask.
Yeah, well, when I sit down and do an interview in this situation, I have 5 things. I've got 6 things for you. But it's so easy to just get 20 minutes out, get half an hour out of, you know, those 4 or 5 things, because when people sit down in the other chair, they've usually got something. They've got something to say. They've got something to share that they think that they can provide value in as well.
Yeah.
So it's nice.
Yeah,
you don't.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that it is about sharing value, because if you're in a business, you're so thinking of it as how does it fit into the business and how are you going to get leads and all of that. But what I really enjoy about the podcast as well is there are some people who reach out to me with a question about their voice or speaking. I'm nervous about this. How do I do that? And they may not be in the position to be able to work with me, whether it's time or money or just circumstances, and being able to have a resource that I can send to them. It feels like I can give people something without just saying,
yeah, here's a bill.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We use it as a sales tool a lot of the time. So when we get an inquiry that's like, I want to do something, but I'm not sure what it is, I've gone, well, here's a client of ours that's done something similar, and this is when I spoke to them about how they did it.
Yeah.
So we find that really valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And your second question was about what do I say to clients who want to start a podcast?
Please.
And it sounds so simple. Why? Why?
Yeah.
Because often it's like, oh, because everyone has one.
Or
they say that's what you need to do. I'm like, not a good enough reason.
Yeah,
really,
my
why do you
marketing
want to do it?
person
Yeah. And like, who is the audience? What's the general theme of the show? And remembering as well, it doesn't have to be a podcast like mine, which I don't know, might go forevermore. It could be a series. You could say, right, I'm just going to do a 6-part or 8-part series on a particular topic. So working out, you know, who is your audience and why you want to do it.
I think who is your audience is really important, and it doesn't have to be a big one. You can have a small audience that is valuable to you or valuable as a client or a potential client. But also, how are you going to reach out to them? How are they going to find you? You need to figure out how you're going to create that outreach, because and a lot of people already have an audience, or it might be an email list, or it might be an Instagram following, but that doesn't automatically equal listens.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so important. Anyone can have a podcast, but people often aren't trawling through what's the Apple podcast to find it.
No.
So for mine, I talk about it on the LinkedIn newsletter, my own email list, Instagram, Pinterest, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, all of those channels. And by industry standards, I still don't have that big of an audience.
Mind you, people are probably, I would say they're more sticky to a podcast than they are to anything else, though. Because once you subscribe, it does pop up in your feed. You might not listen, but you'll certainly see it. So getting people to follow and subscribe, or that's probably the biggest message that we should get people to do. One of the things I noticed was that you're doing your podcast in seasons.
Oh, yes.
Why have you decided to do that, and why have you decided to communicate that throughout your shows?
Oh, well, my seasons aren't particularly themed or anything. I just do 21 episodes and take 4 weeks off. And initially I started doing it because I think I was going away or something, and I was like, I just don't know how I'm logistically going to do it. But the biggest thing with podcasts is sustainability. I know so many people who have the best intentions. They start it and they just underestimate how much work it is to get out there.
Completely agree.
The editing, the interviewing, all of those things. So you've got to really love the process as well. I really enjoy the process. So for the sustainability of the podcast, I always do 21 4 weeks off, 21 4 weeks off. And that gives me a chance to have a bit of a breather, to think about whether I want to change the artwork, change the format, change any of the marketing. And it just enables me to not get to that stage where I think, oh my God, I do not want to do this podcast. It keeps it fresh.
Yeah. But why do you want to communicate that? Why not just have a break? Why do you need to announce it?
Well, because in the past there have been people going, where's the podcast? So this is the funny thing. You think that no one's listening. And then as soon as you don't release an episode, you know, like every episode, I'm like, please reach out. Let me know. How did you find the episode? It's like crickets. You can see in your data that people are listening to it. And then all of a sudden there's no episode and someone goes, where's the podcast? So that's why.
I do get great joy when someone goes, I listened to this and I have an extra question. I love it. The last thing I want to talk about, Sally, is video for you. So I know you mentioned before we came in here that you don't do a lot of your podcast on video. I find it super valuable doing it on video because we get all this extra social content. You're a bit of a social queen, so maybe you don't need it for that reason. What's where are you up to with video?
Well, things like this are great for me because I can guest on podcasts and get some video content. But look, it's just a process thing. I enjoy really keeping podcasts to audio, which means that often I'm recording at 10:30 at night in my pajamas because that's when I feel the inspiration to do the content. If I'm tied to write a whole set of circumstances, the camera needs to be set up, the lighting needs to be good, I need to be dressed for camera. I just don't know whether it would happen. It could be a roadblock. Yeah, and look, like I mentioned to you earlier, I have no doubt that if I had this kind of professional setup for my podcast and put it out there on social with these high-end clips, that it would probably go better.
You could, probably, maybe, but you don't know that.
I guess, you don't know that. And we're mentioning this as well. A lot of people overinvest too early. You know, I had the last guys we had on the episode was Darcy from Bloody Brilliant Beers. Their first 10 episodes are on Zoom. It's great. Yeah, they're COVID podcast guys. Yeah, I remember being on a podcast and it was a Nova podcast, Confessions of a 20-something Train Wreck. It was a really great podcast. She came over to my house and put her iPhone on the kitchen table between us. Yeah. And I was like, do you want to go in the bedroom where there's a bit more, soft furnishings to, help with the acoustics? She's like, no, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, there are no rules with podcasts. Sally, anything else you'd like to talk about? Do you have something prepared? I always have something prepared. Of course. Yeah. What I would say is, I know I just mentioned then that a phone in the middle of a table is fine, but really good audio matters. If you can get good audio quality, definitely do it because that means people can hear your voice more. And when people hear your voice more, they remember you, they connect with you. And I'm writing a book at the moment about your voice print. You have your fingerprint, you have your footprint, you also have your voice print. And this is a unique impression you can leave on the world when you speak. And so when you're on a podcast and people are hearing that, they're not just listening with their ears, they're really feeling it in their body. So the impact you can have and the connection you can make is just so much stronger than anything else that's only visual. So I'd say, sure, think about your visibility, but also think about your audibility. You did mention that earlier on about the connection that voice can have, and it's obvious and it's true. But how can people take advantage of that, or get the most out of it, of using their voice to their advantage? To just use it to look at your social channels and say, where is the video? There's not every single thing being a video, but where can I hear my voice? And if you are worried about what you sound like, which a lot of people are, move past that, because that fear of, oh no, what will people think of my voice? No one cares. Yeah. The only person caring is you. Yeah. So get out there, use your voice, and start by sending voice notes to people. Just get in the habit of speaking things out aloud. and you'll figure it so much faster as well. And especially with AI, I just want to mention that as well, AI. When you're looking at a graphic or a photo, even some videos these days, you don't even know if it's you behind it or if it's a ChatGPT caption. Whereas when people are hearing your voice, it's uniquely human. And the stumbles that you make and the mistakes that you make and the body language you use and the way your breath is, used to say the words and the articulation, all of those things.
You still know when it's a real person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sally, how do people find you? How do they connect with you? And when can they get your book?
Well, the book is out at the end of the year.
Great.
Which is very exciting. Well, I'm not an international woman of mystery. I'm on all the social platforms. So at Sally Prosser Voice on TikTok and Instagram. Also LinkedIn, or you can email me, sally@sallyprosser.com.au.
Awesome. Thanks heaps, man.
Oh, thank you.